أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Alhamdulillah, in our previous meeting we went over the conquest of the Persians and the conquest against the Romans. And now we're going to go over like the aftermath of what happened in those conquests. So because this was a large piece of land, slowly it got incorporated like year by year by year. We're talking about huge swaths of land. So the main victories were already done within the first 4 or 5 years. And then after that, minor victories kept on happening. And again, I just want to re-emphasize the rank of Umar al-Faruq, Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second Khalifa. The Prophet ﷺ said that if there was a prophet after me, there's not going to be a prophet after him. But if there was a prophet after him, it would have been Umar. It would have been Umar al-Faruq. That was his rank. And in fact, when Umar one time at night, he saw the wives of the Prophet ﷺ pass by a place, right? And he saw them, and he didn't like that they were out in the open in front of everybody. He wanted the wives of the Prophet ﷺ to be protected. Okay. And he actually came to the Prophet and he said, Ya Rasulullah, I think your wives should cover. Like, I think they should be hidden so that strange men can't see them. A few days later, the verses of hijab come down. Allah gives the command for hijab for women to cover their heads and cover themselves. And the Prophet ﷺ tells to Umar that Allah agreed with you. Allah agreed with what you're saying. Allah was going to come and bring it down anyway, but basically to give him that honor that Allah agreed with what you're saying, that yes, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ should be protected.
I have a question. I mean, I know you probably went over this a few times, but with the verses of the Quran, like everything, like did Allah already have everything that, for especially like this dunya, like he already had everything in
Yes,
plans?
everything. He already knows.
It's not like he knew what like humankind and everything needed.
Yes.
Compared to Prophet ﷺ, like he had to go through and like the trials and tribulations and figure it out. So he already knew.
He already knew all. Okay. Like I said, Allah knows best, but Allah loves effort. Allah pushes forward effort. He loves effort. For example, it's very easy to think that if the Prophet ﷺ just found out he's a prophet, right? Mm-hmm. Allah could within a second, just like whoever was going to become a believer, he could make him a believer, and whoever was going to remain a kafir, he would have just killed him. Very easy. But Allah has made the life as a test to go through it. Like, just so on the day of judgment, humans can't come to Allah and say that, oh, you didn't do this for us and you didn't give us sufficient evidence. Yeah, and Allah's gonna say, no, the blame is on you. You had opportunity. You had to go through all this. He loves effort. You have to put in the effort to do everything. Even the Prophet ﷺ, he was the most blessed man to ever live, yet he prayed tahajjud every single night. He was forgiven already. He was the best of the messengers, but he still had to go through the whole process. So in regards to that, a lot of times Umar ibn al-Faruq, Umar ibn al-Khattab, he has very high rank amongst the ummah. And a very important hadith about him, Hudayfa was a companion, and he was actually called the keeper of secrets. He was given secrets by the Prophet ﷺ that other companions did not have. For example, he was given a list of the munafiqs. So he was given a list of all the people in the community who were not really Muslims, and only he had this list. And people would sometimes try to come to him and ask for tips and stuff that, like, am I a munafiq, or like, am I not really a believer? He had this, and he had actually knowledge of sometimes he gave him like knowledge of the events of what's going to happen. And Umar asked him about the hadith about breaking of the door. Like, he's like, oh, Rasulullah mentioned me as that I'm the door, and then he said, yes. When the door is broken, once the door is broken, can it ever be closed again properly? No, because if you break the hinge, that's it, it's broken, like, unless you repair it. But if you just leave it like that, it's never going to be closed again. It's like a parable, it's like a metaphor. Okay. That Umar is the door. And once that door is broken, it's never going to come back properly anymore. And now we're about to realize this level of unity that we saw in the ummah, the highest level was under Umar. And as you're about to see, the tragedy of what happens after he passes away, walaikum assalam, until then, until now, until Isa alayhi salam comes, Jesus comes back, the Muslims will have some level of disunity no matter what. So after all the conquests and stuff, Umar radiallahu anhu is in Medina, and obviously because of the conquest, they got some slaves from the Persians as well. And one man was in Medina. Usually non-Muslims were not allowed in Medina. They were not allowed to be in Medina obviously for security purposes. But one Sahabi, he requested that, oh, I have this Persian slave, and he's like a do-it-all type of guy. He can do anything. Like he can build houses, he can he can make swords, he can do everything. He's a very valuable slave. Let me bring him and help us in Medina. He brings him into Medina, and in his heart is severe anger for the Muslims and severe hate for Umar radiallahu anhu, because you have to understand, it's human nature. He feels ashamed that my great empire, like he was probably a high-ranking official and now he's a slave. So he's like my high-ranking empire has been destroyed by these random Arab tribes, these random Arab nomads who knew nothing, who didn't even know how to read and write, and like he had this like hate in his heart. So he started planning an assassination. He said, I'm going to kill Umar. I'm going to kill the Khalifa of the Muslims. And this was a time when Umar radiallahu anhu, when you were sometimes from different countries, when people would come to delegate and talk to him, you could sometimes walk in the garden and see him like lying under a tree without any bodyguards or anything. This was the level of the leaders of the Muslims. They didn't have any care. They'd just be under a tree, just lying down without any bodyguards. As Umar radiallahu anhu is leading the Fajr prayer, he's leading the Fajr prayer, and Fajr is a time of darkness. Like they didn't have lights and stuff, just maybe lanterns and stuff. This Persian slave, he sneaks into the masjid and he hides in the dark corners of the masjid. As Umar radiallahu anhu is reciting the Quran, he's prayed Fatiha already. He's in the second rakat now, and he says the verses that Allah does whatever He wills. Whatever happens by the will of Allah. He says these verses. He comes out of the darkness. He has a double-bladed dagger. He stabs him in the chest. He stabs him in the back, and then he slices his stomach open and starts running away out of the masjid. As this Persian slave starts running out of the masjid, he starts slashing people left and right, and the dagger was coated in poison. He single-handedly caused, like not him, but like because of his actions, Allah caused 6 martyrs. Like 6 Sahabis died in his rampage, just killing everybody. Eventually, some Sahaba got on top of him. They put a blanket over his head and they caught him. As he was getting caught, he killed himself. Now, Umar radiallahu anhu is in the front of the masjid, bleeding out of his stomach and completely unconscious. They pick him up and they take him to his son's house, Ibn Umar. They take him to his house, and look at the emphasis of the prayer. Some of the group of the people go out and take him to Ibn Umar's house. However, the remaining finish the prayer. The prayer must be finished. The prayer, even in this emergency situation where your leader has been stabbed, they still finish the prayer. Yes. They take him home, and he slowly comes out in and out of consciousness, but he's kind of like in a coma. He wakes up and he sees around, and the first thing he asks, he's bleeding out of his stomach profusely. He says, have the Muslims completed their prayer? Have the Muslims completed their prayer? And after that, he says, bring me water. And his son brings him water. He thinks he's going to drink. Before drinking, he starts doing wuzu. He says, I have to finish my own prayer. This is the rank of Umar. He's like, imagine the pain that you're going through. Like you're stabbed in the back, you're stabbed in the chest, your stomach is sliced open. And he's more worried about the prayer. He completes the prayer and a doctor comes and he gives him some water to drink. And he sees that the water is coming out of his stomach. Like it's literally dripping out of him. And he says, this is it. You're not going to survive this. And he says, make your will. Like whatever you have to do, final thing, just say it right now. He makes a will and he says, after me, this group of 6 people, you will choose who's going to be the next leader. He mentions Ali, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Uthman, Talha, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqas, Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, and Abdurrahman ibn Auf. All of these are muhajirin, and all of them are promised heaven. They are amongst the Ashra Mubashara, as in the 10 promised heaven. In a future lecture, we're going to go over all 10 of them. And after this request, he sends word towards Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, the mother of the believers, the widow of the Prophet ﷺ. And because in her courtyard, the Prophet ﷺ is buried, and right next to him, Abu Bakr is buried. And Umar wants to be buried with them. And he goes to her and he says that, by your permission, like he sends a delegation, ask her, can I be buried there with my companions? And she in her mind had planned that I'm going to be buried here, next to my husband and my father. And she said, for you, I'll sacrifice this. Like you can be buried here. In his final moments, he tells his son, he's on a bed, and he says, pick me off this bed, put me on the ground. Put me on the ground. And his son's like, no, father, you're sick, like you're about to die in peace at least. He's like, no, put me on the ground. He's put on the ground with his right side on the dirt, and he passes away like that. SubhanAllah. He dies the death of a shaheed, and he is the first caliph to be martyred in Islam. He's buried in that same spot, and even now, he is one of the companions of the tomb. There's 2 companions of the tomb with the Prophet ﷺ in the same tomb as him. So the Prophet ﷺ, his first companion Abu Bakr, and his second companion Umar. These 2 are the companions of the tomb, and they're amongst the best of the Muslims to ever live. After the burial is done, after the janazah is done, now the 6 get together to decide who's going to be the next Khalifa. Immediately, actually all of them except 2 give up. They're like, I'm not going to be the caliph because this is too much of a responsibility. In fact, right before the assassination of Umar, he actually performed Hajj just a few days before that. And in that, he made dua to Allah. He said, oh Allah, I am becoming an old man, and I fear that I'm not going to be able to fulfill my duty anymore as the Khalifa. Umar was the person who used to cry at night, saying that even if a dog is thirsty under my rulership, he used to be afraid that I'm going to be asked by Allah. This was the leader. This is how much care they had for their people, for the people that they ruled over. So he made dua. He said, Allah, I don't think I can do this anymore. And subhanAllah, a few days later, Allah caused him to become a martyr. And one of his other duas was that, oh Allah, make me a shaheed and make me die in Medina. And this was kind of like contradictory, because you're either shaheed on the battlefield and there's security in Medina. So it's either one or the other. Either you're going to be a shaheed or you're going to die in Medina. And he had both, subhanAllah. Out of the 6, all of them drop out except Ali and Uthman. They're the only ones who sincerely feel that they might be good caliphs. The delegations go on for 3 days, and the final decision comes up to Abdul Rahman, and he talks to each of them individually, Ali and Uthman, and he says, whatever decision I make, you're not going to oppose that. And they said, no, we're not going to oppose that. We're going to swear allegiance to the other person immediately. They meet in the masjid, and he makes the announcement that he has chosen Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu as the 3rd caliph. So the first caliph is Abu Bakr, the second caliph is Umar, and the 3rd caliph is Uthman. Under Uthman, they have lots and lots of financial prosperity. So under Umar, there was huge expansion and huge conquests. And under Uthman, what happened was that the delegation of all this, running the commerce, creating infrastructure, making sure that everything is in place for the Ummah to succeed. And this was a time when they flourished a lot, and they had lots of riches coming in, different empires trading with them, lots and lots of basically lots and lots of success. And with this success, he himself, Uthman, he was himself a very, very rich Sahabi. And I'm going to take this time to just talk about the level of Uthman. He was also amongst one of the first to become a Muslim. He has the honor of marrying 2 of the Prophet's daughters. When one of the Prophet's daughters passed away, he married the second of the Prophet's daughters. So he's called the one of 2 lights, the one with 2 noors, because he was able to marry 2 of the Prophet's daughters. In the Battle of Tabuk, when the Prophet ﷺ said that we need supplies, we need money, he is said to have given up hundreds and hundreds of camels and horses just for the cause of Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ said that after this, nobody can ever criticize him. Nobody can question his rank. Uthman is the one that at the Bayat al-Ridwan, when they were trying to do the delegations at the Hudaybiyah, they thought that he was killed. And for killing him, the Prophet was about to go to war with all of Quraysh. And when he took the oath of everybody, he took oath that you're gonna fight. He said, this is Uthman's hand and this is my hand. Literally, the Prophet ﷺ took the oath in his place. That if he was here, I knew he'd take the oath, so I'm taking it in his place. He has a very, very high rank, very, very high rank, and he's obviously amongst the Ashara Mubashara. He will be, inshallah, the ones guaranteed heaven. Now, the thing that happens is that because of his wealth, he liked to sometimes spread it with his family. So he was from Banu Umayyah. They were all Quraysh, but this was the sub-tribe. And he would sometimes appoint them to, good positions, sometimes give them, money and stuff. And this was from his own. This was not from the treasury. This was from his own money. But because of this, tensions grew and grew and grew, and people started to dislike all the things that he's doing. Eventually, another notable event happens in his life. I'm just going to go through that very quickly. We talked about the compilation of the Quran. If you saw the video before, the Quran was first compiled under Abu Bakr. and this was just a overall just like an overall like collection of the Quran. It was not standardized. Now, the Quran was not revealed in one dialect. So for example, we speak English, right? An Irishman will speak English differently. A British person will speak English differently. An Indian is going to speak English differently. Everybody has different dialects and different accents. To make it easy, the Prophet ﷺ had made a dua to Allah that, oh Allah, make this easy. Make this Quran easy for memorization. Allah answered that prayer and started revealing the Quran in 7 different dialects. So, Arabic dialects. So the words are the same. The words are exactly the same, but sometimes when you pronounce something, for example, we say, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. Some people might say Maliki Yawmiddin. It's like the slight difference.
But everything appears the same.
It's the same. The skeletal structure, the words, everything is the same.
Arabic people have a lot of different
Dialects, exactly.
From where they're from.
Exactly. Because of that, there were different dialects. Now, in the time of Uthman, he saw that now that Islam is spreading very, very far, he was afraid that now people might try to use this as an opportunity to corrupt the Quran or try to change words of the Quran or do something of the Quran. What he did, he had all the Qurans gathered, all of them, and he standardized the dialect of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So the dialect of Quraysh, the dialect of his own dialect, and the dialect of the Prophet ﷺ originally used to recite the Quran in. He standardized that, and all the other copies he had them burned. Now this for us might seem very, very strange that he had the Qurans burned. This was in fact one of the safest, best ways to get rid of a Quran. Because if you have it any other way, like it could be disrespected, it could be stamped on, it could be desecrated. This is a way of ensuring that the Quran is disposed of, or not disposed of, or taken care of properly. So all the other dialects were taken away, and the dialect of Quraysh was standardized. Now, still the other dialects still survive to this day, but not on that level of the Qurayshi dialect. He had that done, and this caused some uproar with the people as well. Like, no, this is my dialect, and why are you doing this, and why are you doing that? He only did this out of fear that there might be corruption later. People might start arguing that, oh, no, this is the Quran, no, this is the Quran. You know what I'm saying? So to avoid that, he had this done. And to this day, the Uthmani Quran that was set the same order, the same dialect, to this day we read the same Quran. Because of this, because of other reasons, tensions start to grow and a faction grows against Uthman.
Tell us about the Quran that was found during Uthman.
Of course. Just to re-emphasize that, a Uthmani Quran was found recently, and I mentioned this in my proofs of Islam video as well. You can actually, if you Google the earliest Quran, I'll actually link it later as well. You can see the exact Quran and you can compare it to a modern Quran. Exactly the same words, and not even that, exact same order of the surahs as well. Exact same surah, and it's just a 2-3 page copy, but you can see that not even a single word is changed. Everything is the same, and this was a time when the Sahaba were alive. This was that time. It's carbon dated to that time, so it is absolutely, we have 100% confirmation that it's like the same surah, same everything. So it's a proof of preservation. So with that, now the tensions grow, and a faction grows against Uthman. And people start claiming different things on him, that he wants his enemies killed, he wants this, he wants that. People start calling him corrupt. And all rebels from all over the Muslim empire start gathering in Medina. And they start surrounding his house. And they say that you're either going to give up your Khilafah, you're not going to be Caliph anymore, or you give yourself up to us for justice, or we're going to fight you. And he said, no, I'm not going to do any of these things. I was chosen as Khalifa, and inshallah I'm going to do a good job. I'm not going to give this up. He says, what crime have I done against you? I have done literally nothing against you. Some of his enemies had fabricated a letter that, Uthman sent this letter and he wanted the rebels killed. Completely fabricated. This was internal politics that's happening now. This is strife that's happening now. And we're reaching a point that now this is some of the prophecies that the Prophet ﷺ had made as well. And this, I'm going to go through some of them. And the Prophet ﷺ said about the trials that the Muslims are going to go through. And this is the premonition to the first fitnas, the first internal civil wars, the first internal strife between Muslims. Before this, never have Muslims fought against Muslims to kill each other. This has not happened before. In the days of Mecca, in the days of Medina, the Muslims fought against the kuffar of Quraysh, then they fought against the kuffar of all the Arabian Peninsula. Afterwards, during the time of Abu Bakr, they fought against the apostates, the false prophets, they fought against them. After that, during the time of Umar, they fought against the Romans and the Persians. They've never fought with each other. And these are some of the hadiths that the Prophet ﷺ said. He says, fitan and trials will come like the waves of the ocean enveloping all of you. He says another thing. He says, the one who sits in his house and breaks his sword is the best person. Meaning the one who avoids fighting other Muslims and he just says, I'm not going to fight. He's the best of these people. He says, Allah will test you in this world by your internal fighting so that you, in the next world, you shall be forgiven. And he says, the speech will be beautiful of some of the people, but the actions will be harmful. And he said, once the sword is unsheathed, it will never be put back in. Hinting that once civil war in the ummah begins, it is never going to stop. In fact, it is never going to stop until Isa alayhi salam, Jesus comes. So this is it. Basically, if they kill Uthman, if they try to harm him, if they take the life of a Muslim who is not, his life is not lawful to take, you are going to open the floodgates. This is it. After this, the Muslims will never be truly unified again. They keep surrounding his house, making demands, and Ali radiallahu anhu is trying to keep the peace. He tells Uthman, I'll send my sons, I'll send my people, I'll send my sons to you, Hassan and Hussein, to protect you, to fight with you. Let's fight them. Like some people are Sahabi are saying, fight them, fight these rebels. Why aren't you killing them? Why aren't you fighting them? He said, I will not spill blood in this city of my messenger. He said, I'm not going to spill blood over me, like over protecting me. I'm not about to spill blood. I'm just going to stay in my home. I'm going to keep to myself, and hopefully all this dies down. They siege his house for 30 to 40 days. And at times, they did not even allow food and water to go into his house. And at this point, Uthman is in his 70s. He's like in his mid-70s. And you have to understand, he is amongst the most righteous of the Sahaba. The Prophet ﷺ would not give 2 of his daughters in marriage to just anybody. This is a very, very righteous person. He's the leader of the Muslims. His rank is in so many hadith. And he used to plead with the people, not to praise himself, but he's saying, don't do this to yourself. Do you not know of what the Prophet has said about me? Like he said that
his title,
the wealthy, like Usman al-Ghani, like he's guaranteed heaven. He said, don't do this. If you kill me, the ummah will never be unified again. Don't do this. One day, the tensions reached such a point that he is sitting in his chambers with his 2 wives, and he is reciting the Quran. He's just reciting the Quran over and over again, just sitting in the darkness reciting the Quran. Some rebels slip by the guards, and they climb up the outside walls. They climb the walls, they break into the house, they unsheath their swords, and they start slashing at Uthman. And his blood was spilled upon the Quran. As he was reading the Quran, he knew they're coming. He still did not pick up his sword to fight them. He still did not pick up his sword to fight against them. He said, I'm not going to be the one to spill blood. I'm not going to spill the blood of a Muslim in this city, in this blessed city. Even to the point where his wives tried to protect him. They tried to stop the blows, and some of the swords came down and chopped their fingers off while they were trying to protect him. They basically it was a death-dealing blow. They hit his neck, they hit his face, they hit his chest, and his blood spilled over the Quran. And they tried to desecrate his body as well, but his wife wouldn't let him. Like they literally jumped on top of the body and did not let the rebels take the body. And basically the rebels kill him. He becomes a martyr, and they run outside. And now this is a time where there is absolute disunity. Nobody knows what exactly is happening. The Caliph of the Muslims has just been killed by other people who claim to be Muslims. Like, this has never happened in the history of Muslims. This is the first time. This is basically the first fitna. This is the first time a Muslim has raised a sword against another Muslim. Eventually, delegations happen for a few days. You don't know who's the leader, what's going to happen. And a lot of the people and a lot of the Sahaba come to Ali, and they say to him that we need a leader, and we see that you are the best of leaders. And he said, I don't want to be a leader. Not in this time. Not in this time when there's so much disunity. When the first time a Muslim has raised his sword against another Muslim has happened.
At this point, how many original Sahaba were left? from the original companionship?
There's a good amount. There's a good amount.
So aside from Ali.
So there's Ibn Umar, there's Ibn Abbas, there's Anas. There's a good amount.
Mhm.
But the thing is, like, again, Uthman did not want to fight. He didn't want to fight. Like, if he wanted to, he could have had armies raised, come into the city of Medina and kill the rebels. But it was the haram.
Mhm.
He doesn't want the haram to be desecrated. Like, you're not allowed to lift your sword inside the city of Medina to kill another person. He didn't want to be responsible for that. He's like, all right, do whatever you want. I'm not going to be the one to lift my sword against you. And in this way, he is martyred as well. So we have Umar radiallahu anhu martyred at the hands of an assassin, and now we have Uthman radiallahu anhu martyred at the hands of Muslim rebels. And in this time of strife and struggle and so much political divide, they eventually convinced Ali radiallahu anhu, please become the caliph, please become our leader and try to fix this situation. He reluctantly accepts, and he now becomes the fourth Khalifa of the Muslims. And typically when Muslims think about history, they say these are the Khulafa Rashidun: Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. Meaning, under these four, true Islam was in rulership. True Islamic rulers ruled. There was justice. They tried to stay by the Sunnah and the Quran as much as possible. They tried to unify as much as possible. And there's a fifth one as well. We're going to get to that in a future lecture. But typically they say there were four. These were the four. And after this, a true just Islamic rulership did not come again. And the lecture is kind of getting long now, so in the future we're going to talk about some of the political strife and divisions that Ali radiallahu anhu went through. And this was kind of more of a informative, historical, political discussion just to get us basically well versed in this history, so we know what happened in the past, some of the struggles that the Muslims went through, and also some of the prophecies that the Prophet already knew this. He already knew this stuff was going to happen, and he used to warn them eventually as well. So inshallah, this can be counted in the proofs of prophethood, and we can just use this as wisdom to know that, also to see the rank of the Prophet. Look at his leadership and his rulership, that no level of disunity ever happened in this level. And as soon as he passes away, the whole ummah is in shambles. The greatest tragedy to ever befall this earth, the greatest sad day to ever happen, was his passing away. And the golden age of humanity was the days when he was alive, his 23 years, from the age of 40 to the age of 63. That was the golden age of Islam. That was the golden age of humanity. And we can honestly never reach that level of peace and prosperity and success ever again. And we ask Allah to forgive us, to guide us, to bring true iman within our hearts, and to increase the love in our hearts for each other, and to take our souls at the peak of our iman. Ameen.